Good afternoon and good evening, and a very happy new year to all of you. My name is Rajat Sadana. I am one of the co-founders of E-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Along with me, I have Payal Tandon. Payal is the other co-founder of E-GMAT, and she is going to be our main host today. The topic of this webinar is how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. Acing GMAT reading comprehension is all about acing comprehension, and to help enable you to do that, in this webinar we talk about a few key reading strategies that if you follow, you'd be able to ace comprehend whatever you read and consequently do really well in GMAT RC. This is a fairly application-focused webinar, and to make sure that you are equipped to handle the question in the webinar, we did send a few video lessons your way. Both of them were on main point. If you have not gone through these video lessons, they are a part of your free trial, so do go through them post this webinar. Just log into your E-GMAT account and you land right into these video lessons. We also have some upcoming free webinar. We have one quant workshop, which is tomorrow. Let's think of this as a proctored mock test which you take, and it gives you insights on your strengths as well as weakness. When you do that, the benefit of that is that you can define areas where you need to spend time, and you can also figure out how much time you need to allocate to go from, let's say, a Q44 to a Q50 or a Q35 to a Q48, and so on and so forth. So that workshop is tomorrow. That's a free workshop. And then next week we have a free webinar on how to pre-think assumptions. That is next Saturday, a week from now. Again, both these, the workshop as well as the webinar, fairly popular. I do recommend registering for them ahead of time so that you get done with the prerequisites for both of these. This is a free webinar, and to profile this group overall, we ask a few leading questions. One of them is, when do you plan to take the test? The next question is, what is your target GMAT score? Based on the responses to the first question, what I really see is the biggest group over here, and we have one big group of those who have more than 60 days before their test. And then we have so 4 similarly sized groups with regards to your target GMAT date. And the good thing about this is, regardless of whether you have 15 days or whether you have 60 days, if you spend a good 10 to 12 hours mastering these reading strategies, they can make a huge impact on your end reading comprehension ability and consequently your verbal score. With regards to your target GMAT score, what I really see is more than 61% of you are aiming for a score of 730 or higher. We also have a significant number of folks in the 710, 720 bracket. And then we have about 15% of you who are aiming for a score of 700 or lower. With that, let me go right in the webinar pane. The screen will have changed for you. I'm going to give the system another 30-odd seconds for it to settle down. All right. What you really see is a presentation pod, and below that it's a Q&A pod or a question and answer pod. During this webinar, if you have any questions, you can post those questions in the Q&A pod, and one of our co-hosts can respond to those questions. That way your questions would get answered, and the webinar will still end on time. There are essentially 3 parts to this webinar. In the first part, I give an introduction to E-GMAT. That's about 15 minutes. Then Payal takes over, and she goes into the key reading strategies that you need to master to improve comprehension. She demonstrates those key reading strategies and helps you apply them. She'll also talk about what should you do next to make sure that this learning carries over to the actual test. Then towards the end, we have an open-ended Q&A. So for any questions that have not been responded to during the first 2 parts of the webinar, any questions for which we need more information from you, we reserve those questions towards the end. Now, to make sure that this webinar is most productive for you, we recommend that in the first and second part of the webinar, that you kind of limit the kind of questions that you ask. You limit them to what's been talked about. So it's perfectly okay to ask questions about reading strategies, to ask questions about GMAT RC. But if you have questions which are a bit more personal in nature, then essentially reserve them for this third part of the webinar, which is the open-ended Q&A. Let me just point out to this third part, which is this part over here. And this webinar is being recorded, and we will also share this presentation towards the end. Having said that, we do recommend that you take a few notes. So if you want to go and get a pen and paper, this would be the time to do that. So I asked this question early on, how many of you what's your target GMAT score? And what we found was that more than 60% of you are aiming for a score of 730 or higher. While that is the case, statistically only 6% of the people score 720 or higher, and this is despite the fact that if you look at the trends at top B schools, the median scores over there keep on going up, and this is some data from the second half of 2018 that we received, and this data is available online. So if you Google those data, you should be able to get that as well. Now, a good percentage of those who get to that score, 720 or higher, they use E-GMAT. Why do we say that? If you look at some of the stats on various forums, you're going to agree with the same conclusion. The first stat that I want to point you guys to is the number of verified reviews. What are verified reviews? Verified reviews are reviews that have been verified by GMAT Club, either using an enhanced score report, an official GMAT score report, or a verified membership. Every review that is posted after October of 2015 is a verified review. The second stat is, if you look at the number of success stories that have been posted in the last 12 months, what you're going to find when you look at each of these stats is that more people mention E-GMAT in their reviews and success stories than do mention other prep companies, and these are the next three top prep companies over here. So why is it that our students are more successful? What is that one reason? If you were to look at that one reason, one thing that you're going to find is the architecture of our learning or our approach to GMAT preparation is very different from what others do. So what is that learning architecture? And to look at this, I'm going to outline two predominant learning architectures that are prevalent today. One is the book-based approach. The other is the private tutor-based approach. When you look at most of the other prep companies that offer online courses, what you're going to find is, even though they offer audiovisual instruction, the architecture of learning over there is based on this book-based approach. When you look at E-GMAT, what you're going to find is that it's aligned a lot more with this private tutor-based approach. So let's kind of look at why one approach is better than the other, and how is it that E-GMAT's aligned more around the private tutor-based approach, whereas these other offerings are more around the book-based approach. So let's look at, how do you get to that 720 score? If you want to get to that 720 score efficiently, and I can tell you, even though you may think you have a lot of time, everyone's gonna, or more than 90% of you are gonna struggle for prep time over here. So the first thing that you need to do to get to that 720 score is you need to create an efficient path towards the goal. Then you need to figure out what all concepts you need to learn. Most of you already know a few of the concepts, but there is a set of concepts that you need to learn in both quant and verbal. Then you need to figure out how to apply those concepts, because merely knowing those concepts is practically useless on the GMAT. And then to get to that 720 or higher score, you need to attain that level of mastery that it's superior to others. Remember, 760 is 99 percentile, or 720 is 94 percentile or so. So you need to be better than the top 95% of the people if you want to get to that 720 score, or you need to be better than pretty much everyone if you want to get to that 760 score. So let's see, how does a book-based approach attack these problems. When it comes to study plans, a book-based approach is all about autonomy. There are no books that tell you how to create your study plans. They might provide an outline, but beyond that, the onus of creating an efficient study plan is completely on the student. The student decides the target quant, the target verbal score, and then how to approach those target quant and target verbal scores. Then the student starts learning concepts. Now there are lots and lots of books that teach you a good number of concepts and do a good job of doing that. But the problem is the onus of validating whether you've learned the concept well enough is something which is entirely on you. People who are good at making that decision do really well with books, others don't. One area where books truly struggle is teaching you how to apply those concepts. Just because of the static nature of books, they're not really good at teaching you what should you do in step 1, what should you do in step 2, what should you do in step 3, and pointing out when and where you're making a mistake. So as a result, a lot of books actually don't have that much focus on application, and when they do, only very few people are able to get that right away. And then with regards to evaluation of mastery, people who follow a book-based approach use mock tests as a means to evaluate mastery. And again, the entire onus is of whether you've of what you've mastered and what you've not is completely on the student. Now, private tutoring based approach works slightly differently. In a private tutoring based approach, a private tutor creates a personalized study plan for you. He or she evaluates you and then makes sure that you allocate enough time to work on the concept that you still need to learn, and while focusing not as much time on areas of your strength. Essentially, a private tutor creates the most efficient path towards your target GMAT score. Then a private tutor teaches you concepts, and again, while teaching you concepts, he or she gives you feedback constantly. One area where private tutoring provides the biggest benefit is teaching application of concepts. And a private tutor tells you what you do in step 1, what you do in step 2, and he evaluates you and constantly gives you feedback on your ability to apply. As you're doing that, a private tutor also constantly figures out how well you've done things and makes a determination as to when do you move from one topic to another, when do you go from verbs to modifiers, when you go from sentence correction to critical reasoning, when you go from number properties to word problems, etc., etc. So what are the key differences between these two approaches? While the content that you learn is identical practically, a private tutor-based approach has a lot more emphasis on application and it is a lot more personalized. Now let's see, why do we say that E-GMATs focus more on the private tutoring-based approach? Let's look at an example of where a student wants to grow from 600 to 720. Now the first thing that you need to do is to define a path towards your goal. So how do you get to that 720? There are multiple ways to get to that 720. Someone who's strong in verbal would follow a verbal driven approach, whereas someone who's strong in quant would follow a quant heavy strategy. Let's look at someone who's strong in quant, and the approach that person decides to follow is the one where he gets to a Q50 and a V38. We offer a ton of study plans. We've actually built tools to help you create your own study plans. You can see some of the links over there, which you can reference once you get the PDF. So now that you've decided that you want to get to a Q50 and a V38, we also help you determine how do you get to a Q50 and a V38. We tell you to get to a Q50, you can excel in arithmetic and do really good in algebra, geometry, or vice versa. There are 4 or 5 ways, and in this case the student decides that this is the path that the student wants to take. Similarly, to get to a V38, this student decides that he wants to excel in sentence correction, do really well in critical reasoning, and do just slightly above average in reading comprehension. Now, how do you make that determination? We built a tool called GMAT Planner that allows you to do that. If you actually go to gmatplanner.egmat.com, you guys can do the same thing. This is a screenshot from GMAT Planner. You can really see the same numbers over here. What I did in the presentation was simply take those numbers from GMAT Planner. So when you do this, your personalized, your GMAT preparation is not just a black hole in which you're studying and taking a mock test towards the end and hoping you get to that 720 score. Rather, it is a set of neatly defined milestones where if you hit those milestones, you can be very certain that you hit that 720 score. That's kind of about personalized study plans. Let's see how we teach concepts. Now, remember, a private tutor teaches you concepts and constantly gives you feedback on your ability to master concepts. Now, here's a screenshot from our sentence correction course. Our actual reading comprehension course works the same way as well. What you see over here is a bunch of audio-visual lessons along with feedback within those lessons. So when you take an audio-visual lesson, we have quizzes within the lessons, and these quizzes give you feedback on how well you've learned. In this case, you can really see that this particular student has not learned the concepts 2.1 and 2.4 really well. Again, it's very similar to a private tutor where you get feedback right after you've learned something. And the benefit of this is you can correct something right then and there, which is the most efficient way to correct. The other thing is you figure out where you haven't learned things well. Now compare this to another popular online course by Magoosh, and what you really see is this outline is very much similar to what a book would really do. You have 2 lessons on subject verb. This time that you see over here is the time of the lessons, not the time that you took. The time that you saw on the E-GMAT dashboard was the time that you spent on it. Okay, there's no feedback, there are no quizzes. Again, this is a book in an audio-visual format. Let's talk about application of concepts, because that's kind of one of the big differentiators between a private tutor-based approach and a book-based approach. In the E-GMAT portal, we have a dedicated application file or a file type that we created when we started this business, in which we teach you how to approach questions. So the SV application file that's outlined over here tells you when you get a sentence correction question, what do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2, what do you do in step 3. And this is one consistent method that we teach which applies to all of sentence correction. If you've heard of the E-GMAT's meaning-based approach, we start with this approach over here. Then we evaluate you on that approach, and then we give you a set of official guide questions that are relevant to just subject verb. Again, the idea really is you learn the application and you master it right then and there. And this is how every module is architected, whether it's a quant module or a verbal module. Now, when you look at the same thing from Magoosh, what you really see is that there is no application file. There's just one quiz over here, which is not specific to subject verb, but that also includes pronouns and auxiliary verbs over here. Again, it's very similar to what a book would do. Let's talk about the last piece, which is the evaluation of mastery. And Khushbu has a really good question. Says, what do you do when you don't achieve your target subsectional score? Khushbu, the beauty of this system really is that if you are mastering the concept and application files and practice quizzes, there's very little reason why you shouldn't. But in case you don't achieve your target subsectional score, you go to this evaluation of mastery, because your goal really was to start from that 50 percentile level, get to that 90 percentile level. And we built this tool called Scholaranium, which is outside of our core SCCR RC courses, in which we have ability quizzes. So you take an ability quiz and it tells you, okay, let's say your target was 90 percentile and you reach that 76 percentile. It tells you where are you faltering. And it gives you your scores on subject verb, parallelism, comparison, and modifiers. And when you look at this, it's very clear that for this particular student to improve to that 90 percentile, this is an area that you need to focus on. And to do that, go back to your comparison module, revise those concepts, come back, take another ability quiz. So good question overall. So again, as I said, while the two approaches teach you the same concepts, it's the personalization, it's the constant feedback, and it's giving you insights on how to improve. That's the difference between these two approaches. Also, the extent of application that is taught, and that is why people who follow the private tutor-based approach improve a lot faster, have a much higher chance of getting to their target GMAT scores. Now, who's created all this content? 4 out of GMAT Club's top 5 rated instructors have created this content. Instructors who've been reviewed a lot more frequently on GMAT Club. So while only 6% of the people score 720 or higher, a good number of them do use E-GMAT. We are starting our next batch, or the first batch of 2019 next week. You guys can download the batch calendars over here. And with that, I've come to the end of my introduction. I will now invite Payal to start the core part of the webinar. Also, if you want to stay updated with all things E-GMAT, you can always connect with me on my LinkedIn. I now have up close to 10,000 former students and top admission officers connected with me on my LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with people on top B's in top B schools, if you want to connect with top admission officers or admission consultants, that also would be a great way. Also, you'd stay updated with all things E-GMAT. We do post about 4 articles a week over there. All right, with that, I've come to the end of the intro. Payal, over to you.
Thank you, Rajat. Good morning, good evening, and hello, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you. And I'm really very excited to begin this new year with the Reading Comprehension webinar, a webinar that's going to help you improve your comprehension, as Rajat has already mentioned. So let's get into it right away. So first of all, I just want to ask you, since it's the first webinar and I just want to know, first webinar of 2019, I just want to know how many of you have actually made this as a New Year resolution to get to your target GMAT score. All right, so quite a few of you. All right, well, we'll make sure that you accomplish this New Year resolution of yours. All right, so let's get into reading comprehension. To begin, I just want to understand what your current comfort level with reading comprehension is. And for that, I'm going to ask you a few questions. And the first question is right there on your screen. Do you enjoy reading comprehension? By this, what I mean is, when you, according to your study plan, if you get to know, okay, from tomorrow onwards, you're going to start preparing for reading comprehension, how many of you get excited about that prospect? It appears that about 70% of the class is not really excited about the prospect of preparing for reading comprehension. So let's understand why that is the case. What is it that leads you to not enjoy reading comprehension? And for this, just think about what is the first thing that comes to your mind that really takes away the excitement from reading comprehension, that bogs you down. Too much reading, timing issues, long passages, again, too much reading, complicated passages, American English, the length of the passages, boring. So it's really the very nature of reading comprehension, the fact that that you have to read long sections of text, and you have to, and those long sections of text are not necessarily on topics that are of typical interest for you. So that very nature of reading comprehension appears to be the main reason why you don't enjoy reading comprehension. And the solution to that definitely is how to read text effectively and efficiently, even though that text is not of your innate interest. So that is something what we're going to look at in this webinar. All right, so now this was more of a subjective input from you. Now I want you to take a look at, sorry, let me go ahead here. I wanted to take a look at these 5 answer choices that you see on the screen and tell me which one do you associate with the most. I'm going to get a poll here. All right, let's get a few more responses. I'm going to expand it. Okay, so the most popular choice is choice E, that indicates answer choices are very close. That is one big reason why with which you can associate for not really doing well in RC. The 2 other reasons are not enough retention and not enough time, that is reading speed is slow. Passages are too complex, that is about 16% of you have selected that. So I would actually put all 3 of them, A, B, and D, at the same level. Limited familiarity with the topic or the subject, that is something surprisingly not many of you have selected. Okay, so again, yes, these are the listed reasons for why you don't do well in RC, but these are not the root cause behind why you're not able to do well in RC. The root cause is something absolutely different, and that's what we're going to explore in this session. Because once you understand the root cause, you can then figure out what is the corrective action to take care of that root cause. So that is what we're going to do through our analysis in this session. So, all right. Now, let's switch gears a bit. Let's get out of reading comprehension mode and just think about, if I give you two terms, active reader and passive reader, can you differentiate between the two? Can you tell me what is the difference between an active reader and a passive reader? And some of you may not know the difference, and that's okay. We are going to be talking about the difference in quite a bit of detail. But those of you who do understand the difference between an active reader and a passive reader, tell me, what is it that you understand? An active reader reads with a purpose. Analysis is done by an active reader. Active reader does comprehending in short time. Not really. So active reader is a regular reader. He may be, but you don't have to be a regular reader or an avid reader to be an active reader. Active reader looks for key turning points. All right, good. Passive just reads, doesn't understand. Absolutely right. Passive reader is skimming. Absolutely right. Active reader is engaged. Absolutely correct. Active reader indulges while reading. Passive just reads without understanding, without indulging. Absolutely right. So a number of you have put in the exact thing of what an active reader is and who a passive active reader is and who a passive active reader is. Now, how many of you believe that you are an active reader? How many of you feel that you are an active reader? Okay. So 70% of the class believes that they are not an active reader. Now, the percentages are so similar that I'm actually bound to draw a conclusion, and I may be absolutely wrong in that conclusion, that the 30% of the class that believes that it is an active reader is the one that actually enjoys reading comprehension. So that's so just looking at the numbers and looking at the proportion here, I could, and understanding the linkage between an active reader and reading comprehension, I could draw that conclusion. And I think I'm fairly correct there. But let's move forward. So yes, active reader is the reader who basically immerses himself in the passage, who makes sure that he or she understands the passage while reading the passage. Passive reader is a reader who's simply going through the words and the sentences in the passage without really engaging with the passage. And an active reader, the difference between a person who aces RC and who struggles with it is the difference between is it happens because you are not an active reader. So if you are an active reader, you will be able to do well in RC. If you are not an active reader, you will continue to struggle with RC. Okay. So what we are going to do in this webinar is tell you how can you become an active reader. Okay. So if you think about it, we've done quote unquote root cause analysis. If you are an active reader, you will do well in RC. If you're not, you will not do well in RC. Okay. Now we're going to see how can we fix this problem? How can we make sure that you become an active reader? Okay. So the first thing that we are going to accomplish in this webinar is we're going to help you get the maximum from the passage. We're going to tell you how is it that you can get the maximum from the passage when you read the passage the first time. For this, we're going to introduce reading strategies. And notice here, I'm saying I'm going to introduce reading strategies. If you understand what the reading strategies are, you will then go into the course, our reading comprehension course, and learn those reading strategies. Okay. Now, for you to get convinced that these strategies work, we will demonstrate these strategies through two small passages. Okay. Now, once we have understood or once we have extracted the maximum from the passages that we take in this session, we're then going to see how do you use that information to answer questions, because after all, you have to answer the questions. And the top reason that a number of you said that you falter, why you falter in RC, is that answer choices are too close. So we are going to see whether that truly is the main cause or not. I mean, is it truly that the answer choices are very close, or is that an artifact of, or is it an artifact of the fact that you weren't able to understand the passage, and that's the reason why everything looks almost similar to you. Okay, so that's what we're going to explore here. We're going to utilize main point question from passage 1 and an inference question from passage 2. And in the end, we're going to stitch it all together and give you a study plan for reading comprehension so that you are well set on your path to attain that target ability in reading comprehension. Okay, now, one thing that I do want to make sure that everyone understands is that in this session, we are not going to be covering long passages with 4 or 5 questions in each passage. The idea, the main point of this session is to tell you how should you prepare for RC and what are the 2 key ingredients for that. And for that reason, we're going to demonstrate using the 2 small passages that we have set aside for this session. Okay. All right, so with this, let's come to the first and the foremost key strategy. And I want to take you away from RC and actually come to the higher goal here. Your journey to acing GMAT RC starts with having the right attitude towards RC. Okay. There's so many of you who are scared of GMAT RC, who consider RC to be a nemesis. That one thing that stops you from getting that higher goal of verbal 40, 44, 45, or that 750, 760 score. Okay. Or that scholarship, right? These scores that lead you to getting scholarship in the school of your choice. Okay. So if you really want to attain that higher level goal, you have to change your attitude towards RC. Okay. For that, what is absolutely important is for you to start loving RC, for you to be excited about the prospect of RC. And how do you do that? The way to do that is that when you look at a passage, you don't consider that passage to be so your first impression when you look at a passage should not be, oh God, another RC. No, you have to erase that attitude that you have towards RC. You need to approach RC with an attitude of an active reader. An active reader is the one who wants to get information from the passage, who wants to get connected with the passage. Okay, an active reader wants to immerse in the passage. And if you think about it, it's a on-off switch in your brain that you have to use whenever you see an RC passage. RC is all about, once you fix that mental attitude towards RC, everything else is going to fall into place. Okay, yes, you have to learn the reading strategies, and that really is going to be a cakewalk if you fix this attitude of yours. Okay, tell yourself, if you're getting bogged down by looking at the RC, tell yourself, if I'm taking the GMAT, then the passage that I see in front of me is going to get me 4 questions. I have a chance of getting 4 questions correct if I focus completely on this RC. And answering those 4 questions correctly is going to help me move towards that 750, that 760 score. It's going to move me closer to the admit that I'm looking for in my dream school with the scholarship that I deserve. Okay, that is what should motivate you to get invested in the passage that you see in front of you. Okay, frankly, I cannot do anything more than what I've already said to get you immersed in the passage. Rest of the stuff is something that you need to do. It's completely up to you. Okay, you have to build that attitude and you have to get immersed in the passage. Okay, now what do I mean by getting immersed in the passage? Really, yes, you should not be scared of RC, that's for sure. Secondly, whatever be the topic, if you have never, if you are not interested in history and you end up seeing a woman emancipation topic that's based in 19th century or whatever the case may be, doesn't matter. that should not matter to you. The topic should not matter to you. Whether you have interest in that topic, regardless of whether you would ever read that topic again in your life once your GMAT is over, doesn't matter. When you see that passage in front of you, that's all. That information is the only information that matters to you in the world. That is what I mean by getting immersed in the passage. When you take a look at that passage, right, and you know that that is the only thing that matters to you, you will put in your very best to extract the maximum from that passage. Okay, you would want to know what is it that the author wants to communicate through that passage. That is the attitude that I want you to get whenever you look at an RC passage. Does this make sense? All right. How many of you thought about RC in this manner? How many of you have looked at RC in the light of what I just said? Yeah, I want to hear some subjective responses. Do you think this is going to help you? Okay, good. All right, very nice. It's difficult actually doing so well. People have done it. Successful students do it, and I think that should be the motivation. Should be what you have in front of you. That is your GMAT score, and your confidence should come from the fact that thousands and thousands of students have implemented this, and we are going to take a look at a few success stories in this webinar. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's move forward. Now let's come to the strategies, the reading strategies. What are these? The first reading strategy is that you need to understand the sentence structure. What do I mean by that? Whenever you read a sentence in a passage, don't think that that sentence is the building block of the passage. You need to think about that sentence being composed of multiple ideas. Okay, so you need to look at the sentence, identify the sentence structure. By that, what I mean is identify the multiple ideas that that sentence intends to communicate, right? So you need to pause appropriately so that you can identify those ideas and you can understand everything from that sentence. The reason why a number of you get bogged down by the details in the passage is that you read the sentence at a very fast speed. You don't pause at the right points. You don't assimilate information. Okay, so that's what you need to do through the first strategy, that is understand the sentence structure. Okay, and let me ask you this question. How many times has it happened that you read a sentence, you get to the end of the sentence, right, and you have absolutely no clue what you just read? How many times has that happened with you? Right, it has happened to quite a few of you. And that is something which is absolutely avoidable if you follow the sentence structure approach. Okay. All right, so let's move forward. What's next? The next thing is predict the thoughts through keywords. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, now, if you think about it, all the information is already presented to you in the form of the passage, right? So technically, you shouldn't really have to predict anything. So why am I asking you to predict? The only reason why I'm asking you to predict is because when you get to a keyword, or when you get to a to any contextually important word, if you pause at that point and you think about what all you have read till that point, and you make a prediction of what's going to happen next, what is the author going to say next, you get into that conversation with the author. You by just merely by doing this action, you are getting yourself part of that conversation, active conversation, and not passive conversation. And what that helps is it helps you to so predicting actually works as a primer. Whenever you apply paint on the surface, you usually apply a primer so that the paint sticks properly. That's the effect that prediction leads to, because if you've already thought about that the author is going to change his direction, then when the author indeed changes his direction, you are that much more confident. That idea sticks in your mind a lot better. Okay. Now, some of you may ask me, okay, but what if I'm not able to predict the right thing? That's absolutely fine. Even if you're not able to predict the right thing, the mere action of predicting was something that will help you in the comprehension of the idea that's coming next, and in the comprehension of what you've already read, right? So there's no right or wrong here. Usually you will predict the right thing because the keywords are very deterministic. For example, if I say, if the author has presented a positive part and then he says, having said that, what do you think the author is going to say next? The author presented a positive aspect and now he says, having said that. So what is he going to present next? He's going to present something against that, something negative. Absolutely right. There are no two ways about it. There is only one thing that the author will talk about, right? So you will, when you go through the course and when you go through all the passages that are solved using these reading strategies, you will get so adept at predicting that prediction would actually become a second nature to you. Okay, so that is our second strategy. The third strategy is somewhat similar but different. uh, Summarize and predict what's next. Now, when I talked about having said that, that was really a phrase at which you pause because that's a contextually important phrase. But the strategy number 3, summarize and predict what's next, what this is that when you read a certain amount of information, you pause and you summarize in your own words what you've just read. You make appropriate notes and you just think about a little bit as to where the author might go next. Okay, so here you're not predicting by looking at the keywords, you are predicting based on what you've already read. Okay, and here definitely your prediction may be completely off from what the author actually does. But again, the mere action of you predicting helps you to get in conversation with the author. That is the whole purpose of it. Why am I asking you to summarize after you read a certain set of information? Is to prevent you from having that overload of information. Let's say you read, there are 4 sentences in a passage, and on a sentence level, when you read sentence number 1, you understand it completely, you understand it thoroughly. When you read sentence 2, you understand it thoroughly. But when you get to sentence 3, there is that overload of information. You're like, okay, I read so much of information. I'm not really sure if I'm ready to absorb what comes next. So in order to prevent that overload of information, it's very, very important for you to pause, summarize, and then move ahead. So it's almost like you're taking in a lot of information, you're understanding it, then you are summarizing it in your own words, and you're putting it on the side. Now you're taking that information with you and you're getting more information from the passage, from the third and the fourth sentences. Okay, now you're a lot more equipped to handle the information that is there in the third and the fourth sentences. Okay, so at a very high level, the first one is done at a sentence level. The second strategy is applied within a paragraph. And the third strategy is applied within a paragraph as well as among the paragraphs. Now, why do I say that it's applied within a paragraph as well? Because it all depends on when you start to have that overload of information. For me, maybe the overload of information starts at third sentence. For you, maybe the overload of information starts at fourth sentence. It all, for someone else, it may start at first sentence itself. So it all depends upon how much information you can absorb, right? Or how much information you can process and keep for ready access. Okay, so that's the reason why it varies from person to person when you pause to summarize. Okay. Now, for some of you, it may appear that, okay, yes, all of this sounds good on paper. How do I actually go about doing it? And that's the whole thing that we're going to do with the two small passages that we have. Remember, the intent of this webinar is to introduce these reading strategies. And at this point, let me ask you, how many of you actually do apply these reading strategies? Okay. So again, a similar percentage. Oh my God, it's just it's similar proportion here as well. All right. So well, for those of you who do, let me ask you, for those of you who do apply these reading strategies, what is your comfort level with RC? Actually, let me ask you this question here. For those of you who do apply these reading strategies, what's your comfort level with reading with RC? 0%, all right. Not that comfortable, 90%, 70%. All right, good, but then timing is always an issue. All right, good point. Depends on the answer choices. All right. So we have a mixed bag of people here. Again, yes, you may be applying these reading strategies in principle, but are you actually getting to the essence of that? Okay, that's what we're going to see in this webinar, and that's what the course is there for you to basically identify whether you're applying these strategies in the right spirit or not. Okay, so um, so we'll take a look at that now. The key thing here, and I think this may help a number of you, you need to apply these strategies slowly to improve your comprehension. Okay? You need to apply these things slowly. How many of you are surprised at this or almost shocked at this? All right, almost everyone. I think that's where that's the reason why people, even though they know what the reading strategies are, they falter because they don't apply them slowly. And you are actually going to be amazed at one of the success stories that we have in this webinar. Yes, it's going to be interesting for you to look at that one too. And I'll tell you why is it that you need to apply the strategy slowly. But right now, I want you to make a note of this in your scratch pad, the word slowly. You have to write that down. Okay. And I'm going to prove that to you. Okay. Now, and I understand that you are thinking about the timing aspect. We'll talk about the timing aspect as well. Don't worry about that. We'll address all these issues, all these concerns that you have in your mind. Okay. So now there's one more, there are some tactical strategies as well. And we have about 3 or 4 tactical strategies that we cover in our course files, but the one that we are going to see in this session is abbreviate technical terms. Whenever you see technical terms, whether they are in medical biology related passages or history related passages or business related passages, always shorten those technical terms, because the intent of those terms is to make the passage more onerous for you to read. Okay, so we don't want that. We don't want these technical terms to act as speed bumps while we are reading. So always shorten the technical terms so that they don't get in the way of your understanding. So now we are going to apply these strategies slowly on one passage. Okay. Now, right now, you're not under any pressure to solve a given set of questions. There's no timing issue, right? So now what I want you to do is I want you to forget about the time. Don't even look at your time. Just read the passage the way it is. Your only goal is to understand all that the author is telling you. Okay, that's your only goal. All right. Now, as you're reading the passage, I also want you to take down notes. Now, you may not take down notes exactly when you're reading the passage, but after you're done reading the passage, enter your notes in this bowl. Okay. So just whatever notes, whatever you learned from, whatever you've understood from that small passage, just put that information over here in a summarized fashion. Okay. And I'm going to show you the passage. And one more thing, if you can simply click on no over here, that means you haven't finished reading the passage. That way I know and once you're done reading the passage, click on yes. So the only reason why I'm asking you to do that is that because I'm not timing you, I'm not saying that you need to read this passage in 3 minutes or 4 minutes. I just want to, but I still want to pace the session. So you guys are going to be pacing the speed of the session now. Okay. All right. So here is the passage. All right. I'm going to so I'm going to show you the question as well. But before I show you the question, I want you to edit your notes and think about these notes to be how you would summarize this passage to, let's say, another person who has not read this passage. So write your notes in that manner because I want to see what your current understanding of the passage is before we go into the description of the passage, analysis of the passage. All right, so I'm going to now show you the question and I'm going to take away the notes for now. Here's the question. Only about half of the class has put in the answers. So let's get the remaining half of the class to also put in the answers. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And we are not done just yet. For those of you who have rejected choice A, I want you to write down why did you reject choice A. Okay, all right. Let's go to choice B. For those of you who have rejected choice B, why have you rejected choice B? Okay, good. Interesting, very interesting. All right, so let me ask you regarding choice C. Why have you rejected choice C? Okay, interesting. And I know that I'm not broadcasting the results right now, so you can't see the responses, but we'll get to all of this when we discuss the question. All right, so now let's come to the last one. If you rejected choice D, why did you reject choice D? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I must say one thing. This batch is really very enthusiastic in putting in the responses. So thank you so much for doing that. All right. So now let me understand one more thing. How how was this passage? Were you able to apply the reading strategies? Do you think you were an active reader? Actually, let me ask you this. This is a more objective question. Do you think you were an active reader for this passage? Good. Very nice. Very nice. That's good to know. So, how was your experience with the passage and the reading strategies? It was small, definitely, as we said earlier. Had to reread it quickly to make more sense of it. That's absolutely fine. Scary to begin, and then your words of wisdom came to me. Good, very nice. Had to reread it. Now, when I say that you need to read the passage only once, it doesn't really mean that. So when I say you need to read and understand the passage uh, before you look at the questions, I don't mean that you can't read the passage again. You can definitely. As you're going through the passage, let's say you go through, there are three sentences in the passage. You go through the first one, you look at the second sentence. It's absolutely fine to go back to the first sentence to just make sure that you understood it the right way, right? So it's absolutely, when you say you had to reread it, rereading it with the intent to understand the passage is absolutely fine, but rereading it with the intent to when you're looking at the answer choices, you get confused and then you go back and you read the passage because you had not understood the passage to begin with, that is not right. Okay, so let's now I'm going to do the work. I'm going to read this passage by applying the reading strategies that we went through. Okay, so let's do that. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC. So ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism is a technical term, and that's a technical term. We shorten it up as EC. Okay. So bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC. Now look, I've just paused there. Okay. Why have I paused there? Because I want to assimilate what all I have read. Yes, I've just read 8 terms till now, but I feel the need to pause and to assimilate what I've read, to put it in my own words. Okay. So here's what I do now. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC. Let me ask you this. What borders on the extreme? EC or one definition of EC? One definition of EC. Absolutely right. One definition of EC borders on the extreme. EC by itself does not border on the extreme, according to the author. Now, what does border on the extreme mean? Bordering on the extreme mean? Now, what does it mean? It's an extreme view. Absolutely right. It is an extreme view. So if you think about it, the author is talking about ethnocentrism and he's presenting one definition and he's saying, by the way, the definition that I'm presenting, it's an extreme definition. So he's already stating that whatever I'm going to tell you next about EC, it's an extreme definition. Okay, it's not a generically accepted definition, it's an extreme definition. Okay, so that's what he's saying. All right. So we read further. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC considers it. Now, what does it refer to here? Considers it. It refers to ethnocentrism. Now, one thing, it's interesting that one of you pointed it out. We have to apply our SC skills here. Absolutely right. We do need to, because ultimately, think about it. The strategy that I'm applying right now is understand the sentence structure, which is understand the meaning of the sentence by breaking it down into smaller chunks. Right? So that is the very strategy, and that is what you need to do for sentence correction as well. So absolutely right. Yeah. And that's why understanding the sentence structure is master comprehension is a course skill, is a foundation course that we have in our course, which helps you to understand the meaning of the sentence by applying the sentence structure approach. Okay. All right. So bordering on the extreme, one definition of EC considers EC a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation in which, now I'm just going to pause at this point. I don't want to go any further to beyond in which. Now, why have what's going to come after in which? What's going to come after in which? A detail, right? Detail of what? Detail of something that we're going to right now understand. Absolutely right. So it makes complete sense for me to pause right now and to figure out, okay, what detail is the author going to talk about? Now, schismatic. How many of you are aware of the meaning of the word schismatic? And I'll tell you one thing. Ever since we created this passage, I have purposely kept away from figuring out the meaning of this word schismatic. This word is going to always be a mystery for me, because I don't really need to know the meaning of this word in order to understand this passage. Okay, because I have to prove that to myself that I don't really need to know the meaning of the word schismatic if I want to understand everything that's there in the passage. It's okay, as long as I know how to process it. And how do I process it? I simply say, if I don't know what schismatic means, I'm just going to say some kind of, I need to understand the role played by it. It's an adjective. Schismatic, in-group, out-group differentiation. It's an adjective. So I simply replace this adjective with saying some kind of differentiation. That's all I say. Okay, some kind of differentiation. And that is fine for me so far. Okay, it doesn't hinder in my understanding of the passage is in any which way. Okay, now in group out group differentiation, what does this mean? What does in group out group differentiation mean? It is some kind of difference between people inside the group and people outside the group, right? So what is easy again? So think about this. I'm always going back to the start of the sentence. Okay, I know it's an extreme definition. I've already made a note of that in my notepad. Then I say, okay, so this definition considers EC some kind of differentiation in which now that I know, now that I've understood what was there before in which, tell me what is going to be the descriptive part that comes next, that comes after in which. What is that part going to describe? It's going to describe the differentiation. Absolutely right. It's going to describe this differentiation. Now, what is this differentiation? Now we read that further. Okay. Now look at what I'm doing. I'm pausing so that I understand. I'm understanding whatever I read, then I'm pausing and I'm then thinking, okay, what is the link between what's going to come next and what I've already read? Now, just the mere action of doing this it brings you into a conversation with the author. Okay, literally, if you think about it, what you're telling the author is, okay, so you've just told me that that this extreme definition of EC considers EC some kind of differentiation. Now, do you want to tell me what this differentiation is all about? What is this differentiation between the in groups and the out groups? So it's almost like that two-way conversation happening just by you applying these strategies. Okay. Now, in which internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in group. Now, I paused after these many words. Okay, I didn't pause, so I didn't break my flow. So you have to so if you think about it, you're just going in a flow and you're looking for a natural pause. The natural pause over here was to the in group, and I apologize for this animation mess up here. Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in group. Now, how would you, these are 5 terms used for certain, used to describe something in the in group. How can you summarize these 5 terms? Absolutely right. Positive feelings towards the in group. Positive attitude towards the in group. Now, for those of you, some of you have written features of in group. No, these are not features of in group. These are positive attitude towards people in the in group. Okay. Features of the feeling of people within the group. Yeah, that is fine. Similars flock together. That is also absolutely fine. So good. So these are positive feelings, positive emotions, or love for your own people. Okay, that's how you can summarize the whole thing. Now, many of you, because we also told you about the abbreviation strategy, many of you also abbreviate internal cohesion as IC, relative peace as RP, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion as SL&D. Now, that is not right application of the strategy because you don't really know what these mean. You have to get the gist of what internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion means, right? And you have to summarize these 5 terms into a single or maybe a couple of terms. Okay, so again, think about when you apply the abbreviation technique. Okay, it's only for a term for which you don't really know you don't really need to care about the long term. You need to simply shorten it up and move forward. Okay, all right. So love for your own people. Let's read further. Are correlated, or these positive feelings are linked with us, linked with what? With a state of hostility. Now you already know that you're talking about differentiation between in-group and out-group. So you already know from the context of the sentence that the state of hostility or the state of hatred is going to be towards the out-groups, right? Even before you read that, you already know that. And that's the power of applying these strategies on a well-written passage. And all of GMAT passages are very, very well written. Okay. So the thing is, if you get the initial part of the passage well, the author is going to actually repeat that same tone, not the same tone, but he's going to make sure that he doesn't deviate a whole lot from what you've already read. Right? But by that, what I mean is that if he's talking about in-group, out-group differentiation early on, then the description of that will definitely have the in-group and the out-group. He's not going to start bringing up he's not going to start going on another tangent right in that description. Okay, that's what I mean by a well-written passage. Okay, so it's not like you have to figure out your way through a maze of words. No, these are all very well put together, very logical passages. Okay, so um, so love for your own people is correlated with the state of hostility, hatred towards outgroups, which are often perceived. Now, what do you think which is going to describe after? So what do you think which is going to describe? The outgroups. Absolutely right. They're going to describe the outgroups. So what are these outgroups? These outgroups are perceived as evil. Okay. Now, we are done reading the passage. We still need to summarize the passage. So let's do that first. But before I go into the summary, tell me what do you think about the analysis that I did, applying the strategies, and compare that to the analysis that you did when you applied the strategies. All right, thank you. Now tell me, whatever I did, was it anything that you can't do? Did you get that feeling, oh my God, how will I do that? I can't do that. Did you get that feeling at all? Yes or no? As we were doing this, did you get the feeling that, oh no, I can't do that? And forget about the time. We are not there at the time part. Forget about the timing part. Yeah, I can see the difference now. So the whole thing that so what I'm telling you is that you have to, each passage that you read, you have to read it in this manner. And it is doable. It is very much within your reach. Why is that? Because it's all very logical. These reading strategies have been developed based on the writing strategies that the author of the passage uses. That's why we say that GMAT passages are very, very well written. Now, these strategies you can apply only on well written passages. If the passages are written not in a structured manner, and believe me, I've read quite a few of those passages as well I would say quote unquote good publications. So then these strategies are not going to work, right? But again, we are very lucky to have GMAT passages as our in our test, because those are very, very well written passages. Okay, so these are very logical, right? So you should not have any problems in applying the strategies on these passages. Now what we're going to do is we're going to summarize all that we read. Now the author has presented one definition of EC, right? And he has said that this definition is a bit exaggerated. Okay. Now, what is this definition? According to this definition, love for your own people is linked with hatred towards outside people. Now, these are the three things that you should have been able to identify from the passage, or you should have been able to summarize from the passage. Okay. I'm going to ask you this. These are the three items, right? I want you to tell me which ones were you not able to arrive at when you read the passage on your own. All right. And as expected, and as I even noticed in your notes, and we'll go through your notes as well, number 2 and number 3 you weren't able to identify. Now if you think about it, number 1 is something that's explicitly stated in the passage, one definition, right? So there isn't much that you needed to do to arrive at that summary point. Sentence point number 2 is an inference that you had to draw from the phrase bordering on the extreme. That was an inference that you had to draw. Point number 3 was the summary that you had to make of the definition. Okay, and these are the skills that you need to build. So most of you were able to get the information that was directly given to you, but some of you were not able to draw the inference and were not able to summarize the, the information presented. And these are the two very important skills that you need to build. And that's where the course, the reading comprehension course, is going to help you. We have a full section on reading strategies and how to infer, how to summarize before you even get to solving questions. Okay, so you definitely, so I want you to take that feedback from this session that you definitely need to build on these two skills. Okay, all right. Now we come to the question. And let me get the polls for this one. Why is A wrong? So almost every, so it was almost unanimous, and I'll also get the choices that you marked. Bear with me. So very few people selected choice A, and the reason for rejecting choice A was also very correct. There's no criticism here. And again, if you summarize the passage really well, you will have noticed that there is no criticism at all mentioned in my summary. So this answer choice is a direct no, right? Now, choice B, about how many students selected this one? Just give me 1 second here. 33 students selected choice B. Now let's look at why choice B is not correct. So, to evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while enlisting its various features. Now, what evaluate means is that you look at the pros and the cons. Now, in this passage, there are no pros and cons. Yes, there is positive and negative feelings, but those are not pros and cons. Okay. The reason why 32 students selected choice B was because they linked the evaluation positive and negative with the positive and negative aspects that are stated as features in the passage. Okay, which means that you didn't understand the context here. Okay. Then there are some people who rejected it from the standpoint of various features, and that is correct. There are no features presented here. It simply presents the definition. Okay, and also it doesn't compare, it actually simply presents the definition. So both of those reasons are correct, and you should have identified but I would say the primary reason that I was looking for was that there is no evaluation. But definitely there are no listing of features as well. Okay, so ideally I would have wanted to see both the reasons there, but for those of you who have selected the reason as various features but not evaluate, I want you to take that feedback that you really need to look very closely to the answer choices and reason out why it's incorrect. Okay, let's look at choice number C. C was a very interesting choice, but 28 students selected choice C. And what was more interesting was the reasoning behind choice C. Let me get this out. The author is not defining, he's making a comparison. So yes, this student is correct. The author is not defining. Actually, he is presenting a definition, but he's not technically defining ethnocentrism. Now, why do I say that? Whenever you have to define a certain thing, would you use an extreme definition to define that thing? If, let's say, your job was to define something, would you use the extreme definition? No. Now you may introduce that topic by using an extreme definition, but somewhere down the line you are going to talk about a more acceptable definition, right? And that's when your job of defining would have been done, right? So that's the reason why this choice is not correct. Now, he is not making a comparison. The author is not making a comparison here. So that is why the explanation presented by the student is not correct. Okay. No hierarchy created among social groups. That is right. There is no hierarchy. But really the main reason to select this answer choice, to reject this answer choice was that there is definitely, he's not defining the ethnocentrism because you don't use an extreme definition. Okay. And in this case, I would say which leads to hierarchy is also correct. Okay, it's also good enough reason to reject it. Okay, um, he's by no means trying to define the concept, but rather he's pointing out the drawbacks. No, he's not pointing out any drawbacks. Um, not talking about hierarchy, talking about group tension. Not really. Could be true, however, B seems better. Now, when I see aspects such as this or reasoning such as this is what tells me that the student has not really understood the passage well. So, when you mark the so when I asked you common your what is the one reason that you feel is responsible for your poor performance in RC, majority of a maximum number of people in the class selected answer choices are too close. Answer choices are too close is not a cause. It's an artifact of your not understanding the passage to the level that you needed to understand the passage. Okay. So whenever you are, so I want you to make a note of this in your scratch pad right now. Whenever you are practicing RC and you look at a question and you feel that the answer choices are very close, that means you have not understood the passage. Stop answering that question at that point in time, go back to the passage and read the passage again, the complete passage. Okay, because that is an indication that you haven't understood the passage well. All right. Because if you do have a complete clarity of the passage, then answer choices are not really close. Then the passage equips you to eliminate answer choices. Does this point make sense? Yes or no? All right. Okay, so let's come to choice number D. Choice D is the correct answer: to introduce the concept of ethnocentrism by presenting a view on it. Now, some of you rejected this answer choice because you said there was no view presented. Okay. Um, intro was only in the starting of the passage. Now, again, because you didn't understand the whole, because you weren't able to arrive at that inference that this is an extreme view, and if it's an extreme view, the author cannot really be defining just by presenting this view. That's the reason why you make this, why you had this reason to reject choice D. Okay, but if you think about it, had you understood the passage to the level that we did when we analyzed it together, you wouldn't have rejected, you wouldn't have presented some of these reasons as the rationale for rejecting choices, right? So it all boils down to you having the right level of understanding of the passage. Okay. So now tell me, what do you think about this whole passage and the process that you followed? Where do you think that you have to improve? This session is as much an intro to RC as it is a reflection, self-reflection. And it's very important to have that self-reflection, to do that self-reflection. Okay. All right, good. So what I'm going to say here is that there are some of you who may have answered the question for the right reasons. For you, keep on applying the strategies and don't worry about the timing yet. Okay. Now, if you made the mistake, but you still understood what was going on in the passage, then the strategies have actually started to work for you. Okay, don't give up, keep applying them. But if you have no idea what's going on, okay, just don't worry. Read slowly, don't panic. Okay, it's just a you've been introduced to these strategies just about for 60 minutes, right? So don't panic, it's just English. You need to trust the process. Okay, pause more often. Understand, I think trusting the process is a lot more significant here than what you would realize, because until the time you don't trust the process, you will kind of feel, and you are already at an uphill battle, you already have that uphill battle too, because you're not able to apply the process. So that trust is very important. Okay, and for that reason, I think it's very important for you to know about the success, how students have faltered and gotten up and then ace the GMAT by applying these strategies. Okay, because I can sit here and I can tell you all about the reading strategies. I can tell you, you apply them, you'll get closer to your GMAT score. But it's the fact, and I do recognize that fact, that you may hold some reservations because you're concerned that, okay, do these even work? Yes, they look good on principle, but what about the timing aspect? All of you were so A number of you were shocked when I said apply these strategies slowly. Okay, so that's the reason why we share these stories with you, so that you can get that confidence. Okay, so here's an interview with Nishant, who went from 40% ability in RC to 79% ability in RC, with the confidence that in his last attempt, in which he scored 740, he would have gotten all RCs correct. Okay. Now, when you watch Nishant's interview, and I do urge you to watch this interview after you're done with this session, um, what you'll see is Nishant first faltered while applying the strategies. Okay, he actually applied the strategies hurriedly. So in principle, he knew about these strategies, but he didn't apply them properly. He did not apply them slowly. Okay, he would read a passage in 2 minutes and then jump to the questions, and he would then have to reread the passage to answer the questions, and he ended up faltering. Despite applying the strategies, he was taking 1.5 to 2 minutes per question. He felt that his understanding of the passage was not sound enough to help him answer the questions, and that is when, after hearing from another successful E-GMATer, he started applying the strategies slowly. Something that we have been doing in this session. What he learned the hard way was that reading strategies are a means to the end. Okay, so there is no point in rushing through the strategies if the end goal is not being met. And what is the end goal? The end goal is understanding everything that's there in the passage. As soon as he switched this mindset, and once he gave himself good 4 minutes to read a passage, he was able to solve questions in under 30 seconds. Okay, that is the level of confidence, and that's the level of comprehension. That's the power of comprehension. Okay, so what you'll notice over here is, and this is something which we'll discuss when I go into the timing bit, that you have the same amount of time. Okay, you're just moving the time from answer choices to the questions, to the passage. How many of you take more than 1.5 minutes to solve RC question, to solve each question in RC? Majority of you, right? So you already have the whole time. You already have the time. You just have to move that time from answering the question to reading the passage, because if you put that time into reading the passage, you will understand, while applying the strategies, you will understand the passage a whole lot better. So in the end, you will not really need to apply 1.5 minutes or more than that to each question. You'll be able to answer the questions in 30 seconds or 40 seconds. Okay, that is where you balance the timing, and that's where you get to ace RC. Okay, so I've told you the crux of what we're going to do about the timing aspect. All right, so let's get ready for the next passage. Are you all ready for the next passage? Good. All right, so here it goes. Let's go through the same drill. Can you all please click on no over here? All right, sounds good. Your notes pane is ready, and there you go. All right, I'm going to take away the notes. Actually, I'm going to take away this one and I'm going to show you the question. Here's the question pool. And here's the question. All right, last few seconds. Put in your answers, please. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll here, and I'm going to take this away as well. So, how do you feel about this passage? Get the poll here. Far better, easier, better, tough passage, easier than last one, better understanding, not as complex. Okay, all right, sounds good. And this is, so the question over here is the inference question, right? But what you're going to see in this passage is, again, when I go through the detailed review of this passage, what you're going to see is where I'm focusing my attention, right? And whether you had done that or not. So again, I want you to understand this. I don't expect you to be able to apply the reading strategies the way I apply the reading strategies, right? Right now. Later on, definitely, yes, after you've had the right kind of practice. But what I want you to see is, I want you to make a note of what things were you not able to arrive at that we did when we analyze the passage together. Okay, so after I'm done analyzing the passage, I'm going to be asking you to give me the things that you were not able to arrive at. Okay, so let's go through this. But before we go into the passage, I want you to read this sentence here. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people. And tell me, what can you infer based on this sentence? Sorry, here's the poll. What can you infer based on this sentence? And tell me, why are you selecting, why, for those of you who are selecting choice 1, why are you not selecting choice 2? Why is choice 2 wrong? Yes, it is not a fact, it's considered. It's just a consideration. Absolutely right. Okay, it's not a fact. Very true. So, we all understand that there are only some people who regard color blue as soothing. We cannot really say that everyone regards color blue as soothing. So, we cannot really say that the color blue is soothing as a fact, right? It's just some people regard color blue as soothing. Okay, so it's not a fact that color blue is soothing. Good, I'm really glad. Now let's come to the passage. And I just want you to park this for a little bit. We'll come back to this part definitely. So now let's read this. Ethnocentrism, EC, and its canonical variants are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia. So, does deemed play the same role as considered did in that color blue sentence? Yes. So, what can you say as a fact here? EC and its canonical variants, EC and some of its variants, are considered to be intimately connected with xenophobia, and let's shorten it up as XP. So, can I state this as a fact that EC and XP are closely connected? No, I cannot. All I can say is there are some people who think that these two are connected. It's not a fact that these two are closely connected, right? All right, so good. All of us are on the same page here. Then I read, so essentially so far what I know is that there are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected. Okay. Then I read further, A complex attitude system cum sentiment structure, blah, blah, blah. I just pause there. What do you think this part is telling me? I just paused after involving because it just seemed way too much information. So I want to just understand what am I reading next, right? So I'm pausing there. It's describing XP. It is a definition of XP. Absolutely right. Okay. It's a definition of XP. A complex now I read it again. So look at this. I am rereading parts of the passage. When I feel that there is an overload, I pause, I assimilate, then I reread that part and then I move further. So it's absolutely fine to reread like this because here you are reading with a purpose. Your intent is to understand completely before you start interacting with the questions. Okay. A complex attitude system cum sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien. Okay, so it's a complex structure that involves dislike towards the stranger, that involves hatred towards the stranger, and everything that the stranger represents. Okay, so essentially, what is xenophobia? It's basically some structure in which there is hatred towards the aliens. Okay, that's about it. Now, would you think that the definition is a fact? Yes or no? This definition, is it a fact? Yes, it is. It's a definition. That's what XP is. It's not an extreme definition. It is nothing. It is a definition. It simply says that XP is a structure that involves hatred towards aliens. Okay. Some sociocultural anthropologists, now notice the word some. Some means there are, now what the author is talking about here is basically viewpoints of some experts. Some sociocultural anthropologists even considered XP and EC. I'm just pausing here. I'm not reading what they considered. Tell me the significance of the word even. Why has the author used the word even? I've not read what he says ahead, but what do you think? Why has the author used the word even? To 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 show the magnified or to show an even extreme consideration to what was already stated. So essentially, till now, what the author has said is that there are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected. Now he's saying that there are some people who take it to another extreme, who even considered they're not just, so even is basically taking it to another extreme. So they are not just, they don't just think that EC and XP are closely connected. They think that EC and XP are opposite sides of the same coin, right? Which what are opposite sides of the same coin? They always coexist. If one is there, the other has to be there. So they are not just intimately connected with each other, they are actually coexistent. If one is there, the other has to be there. Okay, so that's the relevance of the word even. So the author has given you a clue to what he's going to say next, to what viewpoint these other experts hold with relation to the viewpoint that the other experts, which were mentioned early on in the passage, hold. Okay. But obviously, there's a contrast. But a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. What need not be the case? That this coexisting part need not be the case. Okay. All right. Now, can we not say they have the same base with regards to opposite sides, same opposite sides coin? I'm not sure what I don't understand what you mean by the same base, but really over here you have to think what is the implication of opposite sides of the same coin in regards to the context that has been set up already. Now here opposite sides of the same coin is not saying that XP is opposite of EC, because that's not the context. The context that has been set is that there are some people who think that these two are closely connected, are intimately connected, right? So now you are saying that, okay, yes, they are connected, but there are some people who take it to an extreme and say they're not just connected, they're coexistent. Okay. No, they don't really have similar meaning. So same base, similar meaning. No, that's not right. So again, you have to put it in the context of what has been presented in the passage. Okay. All right. So overall, in this passage, the author has defined a new term, XP. He's saying that there are some experts who think that EC and XP coexist. And in the beginning, he said that there are some experts who think that EC and XP are intimately connected. But there are some experts who think otherwise, who basically say that EC and XP need not coexist. Okay. So let me ask you, how many of you understood the passage the same way that we have understood the passage now? Or what points did you miss? Or what points, yeah, did you miss? I like the excitement. That's good. Facts versus opinions. Okay. Coexisting point was completely missed. Okay. Missed the deemed or considered part. Okay. Coexist point, facts versus opinion. Then understood it the same way. Good. Very good. I took their connection for a fact. Absolutely. Okay, good. Very nice. I'm really happy to see that you guys are able to do this kind of analysis of your own analysis after you have looked at the solution. This is the kind of um, rigor that I want you to apply when you prepare for reading comprehension. When you solve the passages that are there in the course or in Scholaranium, I want you to do a proper diligence in solving the passage, in arriving at the notes and everything, right? But then I want you to do similar kind of diligence, similar kind of effort in reviewing the solution and figuring out what points you missed, because as you figure that out from good quality solutions, from the solutions that are based on the reading strategies, that are based on the process that you're applying, you will then be able to see what things you're missing out on, and you'll be able to take that input into the next passage that you review. Okay, so definitely keep this rigor alive as you resume preparing for reading comprehension. Okay. All right, so now let's forget about this passage for a while and just talk about inference, because this was an inference question, right? Now, correct inference is always from the point of view of the author. Remember, the author is writing the passage, right? And what you're saying is what can be inferred from the passage, which means that what does the author believe in? So correct inference is always from the point of view of the author, okay? Correct inference is not something, cannot be something on which the author has no opinion at all. Okay. If the author is simply presenting to you the viewpoint of other experts without telling you how he or she actually feels about that viewpoint, then that particular viewpoint cannot be what you can infer, because you don't know whether the author believes in it or not. Okay, that is the reason why it's very, very important for you to, whenever you're reading a sentence or whenever you're reading a viewpoint in the passage, you need to know whose viewpoint is that. Okay, and does the author believe in it or not? Or does the author believe in it? Does the author not believe in it? Or does the author hasn't or has the author just not cared to mention what his or her stance is on that? Okay. Now, the third and a very important characteristic of an inference is that the author always agrees with the facts because he's a sensible person, right? If you say that sun rises in the east, the author is not going to say, oh, I don't believe in that fact. No. Which means that a fact from the passage can definitely be a correct inference, is definitely a correct inference. Okay, so if there is an answer choice that simply states a fact that is presented in the passage, you can be 100% sure that the author, that particular fact can be inferred from the passage. Okay, so now coming to that, let's look at the answer choices. Ethnocentrism, XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. Now, frankly, this is the view of only some of the uh, uh, experts. It's not the author, neither agrees nor disagrees with it. Okay. XP entails dislike towards the strange. Now, this is the definition of XP, right? Now, there is this concern always, and I don't know where this fallacy has come about, that inference, can they be explicitly stated in the, as I mean, can you simply infer the information that is explicitly stated in the passage. Now, I don't really understand why people ask that question. Really, if you look at choice B, and I know that this is a common understanding that is there, or an impression that is there, but if you look at choice B, XP entails dislike towards the strange. This is a reword or a summary of what the definition is, what definition has been presented in the passage. So this is something that can definitely be inferred. Now, can you say that this is already stated in the passage? Yes, it is stated in the passage. But it's your understanding of what is stated in the passage. It's your understanding of the fact that yes, this can be inferred because that's what the author believes in, because it's a fact. Okay. Now, had it been that if this information were stated indicating that some experts believe that xenophobia is a complex attitude system cum sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike, and antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien, then this statement would not be a correct inference because it's not stated as a fact in the passage, because it's an opinion in the passage, right? So to basically address that concern, and this was a question posted in the Q&A pod, we are not saying that you pick up the inference will be a word verbatim, a part verbatim from the passage. No. But you can definitely summarize the information. The fact that is stated in the passage can be definitely summarized and presented as an inference. That's absolutely fine, because here what you're checking, the intent of inference question, and I think it's always good to go back to the intent of the question. The intent of inference question is to see, can you identify facts versus claims? Can you identify when has the author presented his viewpoint? Can you identify, is the author is simply reporting information, or is he providing his analysis? Right? So those are the things that are going into how you that the test maker is testing when he or she is creating an inference question. Okay. All right. So let's go to choice C. Choice C said XP and EC are not connected with each other. Again, this is just a viewpoint of some of the experts. We don't know where the author stands. Now, let's say if the author said in the last sentence, but a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case, and rightly so, right? In that case, the author would have presented his opinion. He would have agreed with this group of experts, and that part could have been definitely inferred. Okay. The canonical variants of ethnocentrism are closely connected with xenophobia. Again, we've already gone through this. This is simply a deemed view. It doesn't indicate a reality. Last one, causal. This is not even, there's no cause and effect relationship. Okay. All right then. Now, tell me one thing. Do you feel that the answer choices are close? So again, I want you to go back to your notes. Well, what did we write down? We said, if you feel that the answer choices are close, then you don't have a good understanding of the passage. Okay. So don't just, what I want you to make sure is that these are indicators of how well you are learning, you are understanding the passage. So utilize them as indicators. Okay. Clarity makes them far apart. Absolutely right. So good. I'm so glad that you guys are catching on. Really nice. All right. So frankly, you need to trust the process. Okay. And I have a full set of slides on timing and GMAT RC, and I am going to skip a few, but let me just, so again, you can go through this on at your own volition. The main thing over here that I want you to understand is that you have to make sure that you get to the right level of comprehension. Why do I say that you need to apply the strategy slowly? It's because of this fact that you see on the screen. If you Google what's the reading speed of an average person, this is the stat that you're going to see, 200 words. This is the fact that you're going to see 200 words per minute. but with 60% comprehension. Okay. If you actually increase, actually, let me, because I do want to go through this slide here. Yeah. So, but if you increase your, if you if you go slow, then your reading speed, then your comprehension increases. And that's the reason why we say you need to apply these reading strategies slowly so that you can get to 90% comprehension. Okay. Just instead of 200 words per minute, just come down to 150 words per minute. That is slow enough. And that's going to get you to 90% comprehension. Okay. Now, why does 60% comprehension not work for you? It doesn't work for you because you don't get, because of this very factor of 60% comprehension. When that happens, when you read question 1 and you read the choice, think about it. The questions and the 5 choices are presenting new information. That's additional information that you have to process. And then you have to put that the against the passage, against the information in the passage, and you don't have clear understanding of that information that is presented in the passage itself, right? So think about this. You have only 60, you don't understand 40% of the passage. Now you get more information which you have to process against the passage. So definitely is going to create problems for you. Okay, you will need to go back to the passage a lot, and you'll end up taking 1.5 to 2 minutes per question, and that's where the whole 6 to 8 minutes that you had anyway kept aside for that passage go without any proper results. That's these 6.5 to 8 minutes are actually wasted. Okay, versus if you do read the passage slowly, right, to get to that 90% comprehension, what's going to happen is, because you'll have that 90%, and I'm not saying 100% comprehension, there may be certain parts that you're not really completely confident about. That's okay. As long as you get 90% of the passage, that is what we are looking at. When you look at question number 1, answer choices are going to shout out at you saying that, look, I'm correct and I'm wrong, and all these 4 are correct, and all these 4 are incorrect, right? You'll actually take just a minute at the max. Okay, at the max. Okay, there are, and I'm going to show you the other stories as well. There, so in the next story, Anastasia, I think she took just about 45 seconds, 30 to 45 seconds to answer questions. Ultimately, for the same size of passage, your total time is going to be less than 5.5 minutes. So as I said earlier, it's not, the timing aspect is still there. The timing aspect in the test still exists, right? The only thing that you're changing over here is you're moving the time from answering the questions with 60% comprehension, you're moving the time up to reading the passage. And when you read the passage to get to 90% comprehension, you need to read the passage slowly. You can't be reading at 200 words per minute. You need to read the passage slowly. Okay? And again, I want to reiterate this point. The key to success is comprehending the passage in the first go. What I mean by first go is that before you read the questions, you read the passage and you understand the passage completely to that 90% degree. Okay, and to do that, you need to read slowly, and reading slowly with a purpose, with the right strategies, and those are the reading strategies that we have discussed. Okay, and frankly, GMAT RC is one of the easiest sections to master. Why? Because you just have to get the strategies right. You just have to change your attitude, and you have to just put this in your mind that you need to read the passage. You need to have these goals in your mind that you have to get the passage to 90% comprehension before you look at these questions. Okay. Now, this is a comeback story of a student who was unable to do well because of RC and was eventually who was unable to do well just because of RC and was eventually able to ace GMAT because she mastered GMAT RC. Okay, so you should review. You should look at her debrief, her review here. I would come across an RC in the middle of my mocks and I would feel low and lose time and thereby end up rushing through my SC and CR questions as well. So she messed up her CR and SC because of her RC. Then she changed her attitude towards GMAT RC. She decided to get immersed in the passage. As she got immersed, she found comprehending easier. She was able to make good notes. She was able to get more and more questions right. This strategy, while time consuming in the learning phase, helped her to improve her verbal score to V41, that is 94 percentile on the GMAT verbal. Okay. Now, I have a question here. 2.5 minutes for a long passage with notes, it seems to be impossible. Again, it is when you are taking the test. Initially, when you are building up your process, you are going to take time. And that's precisely what Anchal says over here, right? Initially, these strategies may seem very time consuming, okay? But as you build up your core skills, remember, you have to build these skills, right? And let me ask you one more question over here. What I want you to tell me is, okay, so first of all, reading the passage in this manner, applying these reading strategies, it's a skill that you have to learn. Okay. Now, at this point in time, I want to ask you, tell me one skill that you have learned in the recent past, or maybe from your childhood days, a skill that you have learned and mastered. Anything. It could be swimming, it could be playing an instrument, it could be riding a bicycle, running a marathon. Yeah, that's a good one. Skateboarding on railings. Okay. Uh, doing deadlifts. Okay. Learning how to do Excel. Working out. Okay. Good ones. Now tell me, in all playing a guitar, driving. All right. Now, when you were building the skill, were you uh, were you as skilled at it in the beginning as you are now? Yes or no? When you started learning the skill, were you able to do it as quickly as you can do now? No. Did you think that if I am not able to run a marathon if I'm not able to swim a mile, if I'm not able to swim a mile in one go, I'm not going to try it again? No, you broke it down into smaller parts. Right? It's a gradual process. Absolutely right. But in the end, you were able to build that skill. You were able to get there, right? With the right kind of strategies, with the right kind of guidance, with the right kind of attitude. Those are the three things that are absolutely important. Okay. Now you create a parallel experience with learning these strategies, with acing the skills for reading comprehension. Okay. You have the right strategies, you have the right kind of guidance, you have the right kind of tools. You have the right kind of guidance in the form of the tools. And what are the tools? The tools are the E-GMAT RC course, right? The tools are Scholaranium. The tools are questions that have detailed solutions that tell you how you should have read the passage when you read the passage. Okay, that guide you at each and every step, right? So those are the things that you already have. All you need is the trust in yourself that you can get there using the tools that we have. Okay, now some of you are asking that how long would it take? It depends on you. In my opinion, if you give a concentrated effort of just 2 to 3 days on reading comprehension foundation skills, you will be able to read in the right manner by the end of those 2 to 3 days. I would say about 10 hours of time, you should be able to do that. And then definitely you need to practice. You need to know about the question. So how do you answer inference question? What does a detailed question entail? What does a structure question entail? And those things, right? And I'm going to go through the details of that as well when I present to you the plan. Okay. But at this point in time, let's listen to what Arjun did. Arjun did exactly the same thing. He took GMAT 3 times and he could not improve his verbal score. He did everything that he could. RC was his pain point. But in his final attempt, he applied the reading strategies. And he didn't do anything different from what we learned in this webinar. He applied the reading strategies. He focused on gaining complete comprehension. Okay. He stayed calm, right? And he focused on learning. He read slowly, but he read it just once. Okay. And this is not me as an instructor telling you. This is a student who has toiled through the process. So I would really urge you to look at these stories, because these stories are going to give you a lot of confidence in your abilities and in the process. Okay. As a result, he was able to get to verbal 41. That is 91 percentile in his fourth attempt. So that's the magic that's possible, but there are no tricks. What you have to do is you have to toil through it. You have to do this diligently. Okay. Now, I was talking about how you can get to that, right? The first thing that you have to do is you have to improve your comprehension. Then you have to learn question types, and then you have to practice in the right manner. And the E-GMAT course has all the tools that you require in order to gain confidence in all these three aspects, right? The first one, your dedicated skill building exercises. Right, so you have these dedicated skill building exercises through Master Comprehension course. That's where you learn how to read a sentence. You have reading strategies files 1, 2, and 3, and you have practice files 1, 2, and 3. You have 8 passages with rigorous application of reading strategies. So if you spend 10 hours on this part, you will be able to build this core skill. Okay, again, this is dedicated effort. These 10 hours should not be half an hour today and then half an hour on let's say next Tuesday and then half an hour on next Friday. No, these 10 hours are dedicated effort. In fact, what I would recommend is, if you are spending, so spend these 10 hours over the course of maximum 3 days, no more than that. Okay. Learn question types. The second, once you learn how to read the passage, right, then you have to learn how to answer question types. For this, we have these specialized concepts. Main point, whatever we discussed today, that was just a very brief introduction, right, to main point questions. What you see over here in the course are 2 concept files and then 2 practice files. The same way, inference, there are 3 concept files just explaining to you how to answer inference questions. What is a correct answer choice entail? What are the different kinds of incorrect answer choices that the author creates, right? Then you have inference practice files. The same thing with detail and same thing with structure. So as you can see, there are specialized concepts to teach you all about how to answer questions. Okay, so we have broken down the whole process into logical steps, and these are all the milestones that you have to arrive at in order to get to your target ability in RC. Now, once you have done 1 and 2, you need to now practice in the right manner. No one gets to 90 percentile ability just by knowing 1 and 2, just by doing 1 and 2. Preparing for GMAT and getting to that target ability is an iterative process. You get to a certain point after doing 1 and 2. Let's say you get to 65% ability. Now you need to practice, you need to hone your skills to get from 65% ability to, let's say, 80% ability and then to 90% ability. For that, you need to have purpose-built dedicated practice that is built for this very purpose. Practice that is not just a group of questions put together. No, a group of questions put together with the intent that you have to get from one level to another and then from that level to another level. Okay. We have 4 application files. We have 10 ability quizzes in Scholaranium. Overall, you have upwards of 45 RC passages or upwards of 250 questions with uniform coverage across all the topics that you are bound to see on the GMAT. Okay. All right. So with this, I'm going to just end with Anastasia's video over here. So this is another student who made reading slowly as a habit, and she took GMAT 3 times. She took private tutor the second time in Moscow. She couldn't score beyond 680, but then she took Master Comprehension course to heart, and successful students do that. They build their foundation skills. They She learned how to read to understand the meaning. She also made sure, as Arjun did, to read the passage only once. And that is the power of reading slowly and reading really, really well. Okay? So, frankly, be diligent, be smart, don't focus on quantity, don't do the misstep of timing. Okay? Don't rely on tricks. Use the strategies that work. And remember, as on the road, on the GMAT, speed kills. Okay? All right. So with this, we've come to the end of this section of this part of the webinar. What I'm going to ask you now is tell me, actually, let me get the right pod here. For some reason, I don't see the pod. All right. Yeah, there you go. What do you think about what you've learned here? Okay. And how is that going to, how do you think it's going to impact your preparation for RC and ultimately your GMAT? And then I'd also want you to rate the webinar. See, ultimately, as I said earlier, RC is the easiest section to master. All you have to do is get your attitude right. That's about it. All right. Need to be more consistent. Seems doable. So good. I'm really happy to have a great start here. I think this should you've started on the right tone, and I'm really excited for all of you, and I'm really happy that you were such a good audience, and the way you interacted was really good. And I think you've looking at your responses and looking at how you were progressing in the session, I feel that most of you have understood the gist that I wanted you to take away from this webinar. So I really wish you all the very best. Let us know how we can help you get to that target GMAT score of yours, and good luck. And Happy New Year once again. I'm going to invite Rajat back into the webinar now, and so that you can ask him any non-RC related questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, guys. As Payal said, thank you very much for spending time with us today. Let me share the presentation. Here is the session PDF. And let me also share the batch calendar with you. Okay. So Suman, the batch calendars are all up there. You can download those batch calendars over there. Rahul says, how do we build the skill in just 15 to 20 days with just 15 to 20 days left for the GMAT? Rahul, 15 to 20 days is a lot of time. I mean, we have, I'd say about 20% of our students spend a month or less for their entire GMAT preparation. If you go to our website, you're going to find a number of users who've improved in 30 days or fewer. Now this data is a bit older, but if you go on GMAT Club, you're also going to find a number of E-GMAT students who've done the same. So yes. How many hours are needed to complete your reading comprehension preparation? It depends on what your starting point is. If you're someone who's starting at 50 percentile, you probably need about 25 hours. If you're someone who's starting at 20 percentile, then you probably need about 40 to 45 hours to get to that 80 percentile score. Let me just Take a look at the study plan article and understand how we calculate the amount of time required. How do you retrieve if content is not supported? Okay, if you're using a tablet or a cell phone to watch this webinar, then you probably can't download stuff. So in that case, we will be sending the recording to you. So in about 12 hours, should be able to get that. Neha says, will the material be available to me for lifetime or only for 6 months? All our courses are for 6 months only. How many hours per day do we expect you to spend on to go from 24 to 41? Again, the time is the score is immaterial, but essentially if you go for our live courses, we expect you to spend 2 hours per day on a working day and 4 hours per day on a weekend. If you go for our on-demand courses, it's some completely on-demand, so you decide how many hours you spend per day. But our typical expectation is that a, a working professional can put in about 2 hours per day during a working day, and those are high quality hours of learning. Can you attend multiple batches over a 6 month period? Absolutely, you can. If you do need to, you can. What would I suggest? Someone who's worse in quant and average in verbal. The strategy I would suggest if you're not as great in quant is to make your strategy verbal driven. So in that case, I would recommend that you first get to a V42 verbal score and then get the required quant score. That's what we call as a verbal driven strategy. Are 45 days enough to ace the GMAT with get to V41 if you're currently at V26? Absolutely, I think 45 days are plenty. We have many students who've done that. So let me share some success stories with you. Here's a success story of a student who's actually okay. Let me just. Shalini says, do you suggest classroom courses for people who can't study online? Um, First of all, there are very few people who can't study online, but if you feel you're someone who cannot study online, then I would recommend a high quality classroom course. I would not recommend, most typical classroom courses in India are taught by instructors who don't know the G of GMAT. So I would recommend that you go for a classroom course where you know the instructors or you know the instructors are well paid. Um, so that's something that I would truly recommend. So Gek, there's someone who says, I'm at 650 right now. I'd love to get to a 720. I have the exam in 12 days. Is it too late to join E-GMAT? It depends. It depends. The question really is, if you want to go from a 650 to a 720, you need about 60 hours of effort. Can you spend 60 hours in 12 days? If you can, then it's not too late. But if you can only spend 20 hours, then maybe it is too late. How do you start a course? So if you're an E-GMAT student, the moment you purchase, we ask you to go through a module called Your Study Plan. That module has diagnostic tests that define your starting abilities in SCCRRC and as well as the two quant sections. So that's where you would start. What's the best mock to judge your level? GMAT Prep. Are there some people who can mentor on the progress? So there are, but essentially, again, as you go through the Your Study Plan course, we tell you how you can track your progress yourself. I mean, most people don't need that with the tools that we provide. But if you have questions, you can write to our support team, and they'll get back to you within one business day. Someone has a great question. He says the first batch completes on 31st of March. Considering that, how much time would I need? So the quant plus verbal, yes, to go for the exam. The good thing about this, Suman, is as you go through our courses, you would be doing a ton of practice. For example, when you go through our RC course, you will have solved about 250 to 300 CR arguments, which is 1.4 times as many arguments as you would see in the official guide. So 80% of your practice will have been done if you're doing the course properly. So given that, you'd need about 20 days after the course is over to take the test. How much do I charge? How much do we charge for the entire course? Our GMAT Live Prep costs $499, and that's the best course that we offer. If you want an on-demand course, you can go for GMAT Online. Avinash says, I need to improve my verbal score from 27 to 40 in 15 days. It's my second attempt. Can I modify my E-GMAT verbal course to the extent that only my weak areas are covered and things get completed on time? Absolutely, yes. The courses are designed to be modified. Again, your study plan course tells you how to do that. Let me also so if you send us your ESR, considering it's your second attempt, we can help you define how much time you should spend. Also, take a look at these templatized study plans over there. What's the advantage of verbal online over live or live over online? So verbal live contains verbal online. The advantage of the live course is that you basically get to work with an instructor, and then we hold you accountable to complete the course. Now, when you get to work with an instructor, there are 2 or 3 things happen that actually a human can do today. One is an instructor can look at how you're solving questions and point out mistakes in your methods, which is something that a human can do. You also can ask questions in a live environment to the instructor. Now, so those are 2 things that happen just in the live session. The second part is, we hold you accountable. It's not just E-GMAT holds you accountable, but also your fellow batch members also hold you accountable for your preparation. So you push that much to prepare. So those are the 2 benefits of the live portion. Other than that, the online portion is so just verbal online is a complete course. It is our most popular course. It is actually the world's most reviewed course anywhere. Whether you look at be it the GMAT or GMAT Club, it teaches you all the concepts, it teaches you all the methods, it gives you all the practice. And also, when you have a doubt, you can post the doubt in our internal forums, and we respond to doubts within 1 business day. So both courses very popular. They just serve different needs. if you are a student who can really say, I have full control over how I work, and I don't need assistance from a live instructor, Verbal Online is your course, or GMAT Online is your course. If you really say, no, I think I can benefit from a live instructor, I can benefit from the feedback that I can get that live from an instructor, then Verbal Live is the course for you. Are 45 days enough to go from V27 to V41? They are, yes. They are enough to go from V27 to V41, absolutely. What is a verbal driven strategy? Verbal driven strategy is where you maximize your verbal score first, and then you improve your quant enough to actually get to your target GMAT score. An example of a verbal driven strategy would be, I'm going to share a success story of a student who improved to 760. Her name is Anupriya. She improved her verbal score to V46, and then she improved her quant to Q48 to get to a 760. This is a verbal driven strategy. At the same time, there are people who get to a Q51 first, and then they basically improve their verbal score enough to get to a 760, and that is a quant driven strategy. So Q51 V41 will get you to a 760. Here is a list of success stories and a few other admission tips that may be useful. There are about I think there are close to 100 blog posts over there that you can really look at with a bunch of success stories included over there. Can we subscribe now and join the second batch? Yes, you can. Absolutely. As I said, you can attend any batch during the 6-month period. The quant and verbal live sessions, the timings coincide. Is why how can I attend both the batches? You don't, and that's it's done on purpose that we don't recommend people attending both the quant and verbal live sessions at the same time. The reason for that is that most people cannot put in more than 20 hours per week to study for quant and verbal. Can only put in 20 hours per week, and if you're attending a live batch, you need to put 20 hours on verbal and 20 hours on quant. So you need 40 hours, and most working professionals aren't able to do that. So if you want help with both quant and verbal, we recommend that you first join the quant batch and then the verbal batch. Do we recommend Manhattan and Veritas Prep mock tests apart from GMAT Prep? We recommend Manhattan test as a means to build stamina, but not as an indicator of your score. Usually we've found about a 20 to 25% variation in Manhattan tests. Veritas, I have not seen them to be very representative. Addy says, I went through the RC course, I scored 70% on average in my OG practice, and when I appeared for the test in Scholaranium, he could not score as well. How can you help me? Definitely, Addy. I think the first thing that you should do is send an email to the support team. We want to look at not just your official guide quizzes, but also how you've scored in the other quizzes. Because if you do well in the OG quizzes, you're not going to do badly in Scholaranium. So the possibility that I want to consider is, did you know a lot of the official guide questions, which is what would be the case if you had done those questions and beat the GMAT or GMAT club. So send an email to our support team. They can look up the stats. They can also look at how you attempted Scholaranium and really see, hey, did panic set in when you're attempting Scholaranium because it's a test mode attempt, and then they can provide you feedback. What's the benefit of a live class over online besides enriched experience? Not a whole lot, I would say, with regards to the content. Content-wise, both online and live courses are absolutely the same. But remember, A lot of you are going for an MBA, and in an MBA you're going to work with professors. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, what benefit will I get in working with people who've designed the course? And then when I'm getting a lot more hand holding. One thing that I tell people is, if you like the free webinars, you're going to love the paid sessions, because there's a lot more interactivity in the paid sessions than is in the free webinars. So yeah, content wise, no difference. Interaction wise, there's a big difference. Rajiv says, I haven't done, he took the GMAT 5 years ago. He was at Q47, V27. Should he work on verbal to bring it up, then start quant? Rajiv, it depends on how much time you have. If you have ample time, then it doesn't matter what you work on first. If you feel like working on verbal first, then yeah, definitely go for it. Again, you need to work on both verbal as well as quant. Avinash says, I scored 650 plus in official GMAT prep, 2, 3, and 4, but in actual exam my score was only 600. Any advice? Avinash, I'd have to see the ESRs of your GMAT prep 2, 3, and 4, and then your official ESR to really tell you where you faltered. And that, I think, will give us a lot of insights. Other than that, one other question that I will have for you is, did you practice on GMAT Club or Beat the GMAT? Why I say that? Because these forums have all the questions that you see on the GMAT prep mocks, and which makes the mocks, somewhat useless. And that's kind of why I discourage practicing questions on GMAT Club, because you would use up questions and then you would see um, some of the questions that you're likely to get on GMAT prep tests. And even if you've seen 3 to 4 questions that you got on the GMAT prep exams, it makes a huge difference. Um, Nisinet says, the vocabularies of GMAT are very difficult. How can I improve this? So first of all, GMAT, unlike GRE, is not a test of vocabulary. So it's not going to test you on vocabulary. There are very, very few words that you'd really see on the GMAT that you will probably not see on your daily English conversation. So do not worry about vocabulary. In the rare case that you see a word that you find difficult, you can always infer the meaning. I do not recommend people to learn vocabulary for the GMAT. What I do recommend them is that they read The Economist for about 20 minutes a day. And when I say 20 minutes a day, just read 2 articles, no more than 2 articles. Read them slowly and understand what you've read. That's all that I ask. If you do that, if you understand what you're reading, then you will have no problems understanding the GMAT. Kritika says, I'm currently using an online GMAT resource. Where can you email to get help with ESR analysis? You can email to our support team. The email address is support@e-gmat.com. Let me just write that to you. But Kritika, I also recommend that you first go through the ESR analysis, the modules in the Your Study Plan course. Also, we have written 2 or 3 articles on ESR analysis. I mean, you may just be able to do it yourself, but if you have questions after that, we're welcome to write to us. We have experts who probably know more about how to analyze an ESR than anyone else in the industry. Soumya says, is there a plan which outlines where to start and where to continue there for every student for GMAT Live? We teach you principles, but if you want us to help you create a plan, we can help you do that. We can also teach you how to create that plan for yourself and give you tools that can help you do that, including the diagnostics, including our GMAT planner and other things. So we equip you with everything that you need, and if you still have questions, we help you there. Tarun says, do you advise the following? Attempt GMAT prep mocks free and purchase twice, first and then exhaust GMAT club. Tarun, here is something that I advise students. If you are an E-GMAT student and and if you have GMAT prep mocks, you don't even need to go to GMAT club. I mean, you will have access to more than 4,000 questions. Trust me, most people don't need more than 1,500 questions if they're doing them well. If you read any of the success stories, watch any of the success story interviews that we have, you're going to find people don't do tens of thousands of questions to ace the GMAT. They do few questions, they do them really, really well. And when they make a mistake, they revise. Watch this video interview to really see that. Shrey says to be and it's a really good question. He says to be a part of live session, it is advisable to go through specific modules without necessarily mastering it. So isn't it a demerit of your overall prep? Okay, good question, Shrey. We never advise you to go through a module without mastering it. No. So when you go through a module, go through it with all the seriousness. You go through it with all the diligence, and you master it. The live portion is the cherry on the cake. So it's not a disadvantage. And that's why with our live courses, because we track your preparation, we offer the guarantee. We offer a 4-point score improvement guarantee on verbal and 3-point on quant on a scale of 60. And that's the best guarantee in the industry. And we offer this guarantee up to any score level. For example, on the verbal side, even if your starting score is V37, we guarantee a V41, which is 94 percentile on GMAT verbal. No one in the industry offers this guarantee. Similarly, on quant side, if you start with a Q47, we guarantee a Q50. No one in the world offers this guarantee. We don't, and then remember, these are pure guarantees, which means we don't ask you to take the test twice or thrice. We say if you have an official score, you take our course, you do it properly, you take the next attempt. You don't improve, we give you your money back. If you look at a few of the other prep companies, they would ask you to take the exam multiple times. We don't do that. Alright guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. We have the quant workshop tomorrow. Make sure you attend that. It'll give you a great starting point. Also, make sure you go through the prerequisites, which are a part of the free trial. Lastly, register for the critical reasoning webinar, which is next week. Thank you very much and have a great rest of the day.